Welcome to the Broncos podcast with Troy Rink. I am your host, Troy Rink from the Denver Post. Thank you for joining me from wherever you are, your car, your laptop, stealing some time during your lunch break here on a wonderful Friday. It is a big weekend of Colorado sports. Obviously, we have the CU-CSU game on Saturday night. And of course, Broncos make their home opening debut against the Steelers. And there's some urgency to that game, folks. If you look at the schedule, we're going to get into that later. But what are some of the things the Broncos need to keep an eye on against the Steelers to avoid some of the same issues that occurred up in Seattle? How's Bo Nix going to play? What are the challenges that Bo Nix has faced? And is there a receiver that could unlock the potential of this offense? Again, Broncos, Steelers, Sunday afternoon. Bo Nix's home debut. The place is going to be rocking. No Russell Wilson. No juice there. But let's not underestimate the importance of this game, even in game 2, if the Broncos feel like they're going to surprise some people this season. We're going to get to all of that after the break. If you've been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work, what are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggett Injury Law a call. Their motto, I love this, it's personal. It's because it is for Darby Hoggett. I've known Darby for years. We became friends watching our boys play baseball around the country. I became his good friend. Many of his clients become his good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. Again, if you have been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work, give Darby's team a call. That number, 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGATT, or visit the website at hoggettlaw.com. Welcome back to the Broncos podcast with Troy Rink. Again, I'm Troy Rink from the Denver Post. Hope you're reading me in the Post. You can find all the links. I tweet it at Troy Rink on Twitter, TroyRenck, or Facebook under my first and last name, even on Threads. I'm not cool, but I'm on Threads. I try to get those links out for you. Wrote multiple columns on the Broncos this week. Some of them will serve as topics today as we look at Broncos v. Steelers. I tried to tell you all, I tried to warn you, Bo Nix winning in Seattle was going to be problematic. And it really had not as much to do with Nix as it did the location, the sound, the noise, facing a defensive coordinator that you didn't know a lot about on how he was going to call his game as a head coach. Predictably, Nix struggled. And let's get this out of the way right now. It's okay to like Bo Nix, and I like his future, and admit he didn't play a good game. He did not play well against Seattle by any metric. When I saw some tweets, I mean, Rich Eisen had a tweet. He's like, love what I'm seeing from Bo Nix. I almost DM'd him and said, was that a scheduled tweet? I mean, he was averaging like 2.6 yards an attempt with multiple picks. I'm like, what rubric are we evaluating this on? So I think Nix, in watching the film, understands he made mistakes. That's part of this issue here and why I think he's going to be able to bounce back and deal with what is going to be clear adversity this first month of the season. But Nix has humility and he has confidence. And that blend is important. You have to be humble in the NFL. Because, Clint Hurdle used to tell me this about baseball, and it was more about hitters. But there are those who've been humbled and those who are about to be. The CU Buffs could learn something from that, frankly. I like confidence, but there's a point where you're overconfident that it just comes across as faux arrogance, that you're trying to, puff your chest out because internally you really don't believe it. And it's the old, don't talk about it, be about it. And Nix has this blend of humility and confidence that should serve him well as he moves forward in his career and certainly this season. Against the Steelers, they're not going to trick it up as much as Seattle. Their personnel is better. I think, the scheme might be better in Seattle with McDonald, the way he's going to eventually run it, especially if they're able to stop the run. That's not something they did great in Baltimore. They just take the ball away. That's something they really did well. The Steelers are known for getting after the passer. And last week against Atlanta, they made Kirk Cousins look like he had Achilles surgery like 2 hours before the game. He had no interest in stepping up into the pocket, and they couldn't run. And the Steelers dominated them in every way. I think 231 yards of total offense. So the challenge is real for Bo Nix. And their rushers are better with Cam Hayward, and certainly T.J. Watt people ask about TJ Watt. He's not, for me, the best edge rusher. He might be the best player at any position in the NFL. I mean, this guy writes a diary of havoc. And it's not just pressure, it's knockdowns, it's deflected passes, it's strip sacks, it's tackles for loss. I mean, he's like getting the Gordie Howe hat trick where the entire stat sheet is filled. That's hard to do as an edge rusher. Because a lot of true edge rushers don't support the run great. Either their size or they don't have a willingness to do it, interest in doing it. TJ Watt is just a red line player. He is playing at absolute full throttle. So Garrett Bowles, that matchup's going to be huge. We have to keep an eye on it. They're going to move Watt around some too, as my guess. They'll move him over to McGlinchey because Mike's had some issues in pass pro. So when we look at Bo Nix specifically, getting on topic, and you see our topics here. The reason this is a challenge, and we're going to go macro to micro. I was doing research yesterday regarding Bo Nix, and let me get this out of the way. It's the right decision to start Bo Nix. 61 college starts. He's not mentally overwhelmed. The only way I would not have started him is if he was swimming mentally, like that deer in the headlights, doesn't know what he's doing. It's not fair to him, not fair to his teammates. That's Paxton Lynch that we saw. You see it. Even Caleb Williams, frankly, for the Bears, has that glazed eyes look that frightens me a little bit, that he's just not seeing things correctly. Drew Lock had some of that, certainly, his rookie year. Nix does not look overwhelmed mentally at all. So I'm not saying in all this is a mistake to start him. It wasn't. But let's have patience and understand context. Do you realize the challenge Bo Nix is facing? His first 4 starts of his career, he's facing 4 consecutive coaches who were defensive coordinators in their previous life. How many other starters this year, rookie starters, are going to have that challenge? 0. No one. And it's hard when you face a defensive coach. That's their brand of football. They're going to live or die with that. If they're going to lose, they're going to lose going down with their defense. And so, how many quarterbacks, first-round quarterbacks, over the last 5 years do you think faced the challenge of their first 4 starts in September, starting with week 1? Because you could look at somebody's first 4 starts. I'm saying look at their first 4 starts, starting with week 1 through week 4. How many over the last 5 years, first-round quarterbacks, do you think faced 4 consecutive former defensive coordinators? 0, 0, 0. That speaks to the challenge of Nix. So Kyler Murray did it in, 19? And he went 0-3-1. Zach Wilson, who's now a third stringer for the Broncos, he did it. He went 1-3. One of those games was at Denver against Vic Fangio. You probably remember there weren't a lot of highlights of the Fangio era. That was one of them. Shut out the Jets 26-0, and Zach Wilson looked awful. So I'm just trying to provide a framework and context here that not only is Nix starting out of the gate, he's starting for a team that does not have true weapons offensively, a Jamar Chase, a CD Lamb, even a Lively from as a tight end from the Ravens, or Andrews or Kelsey. He doesn't have this obvious weapon, a top 5 back, no. A great tight end room, nope. A true number 1 receiver that would be a number 1 on 25 teams. So that's the challenge. Starting early, a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons, and he's starting his first 4 games against former head coaches who were former defensive coordinators. Mike Tomlin, he did it against Mike McDonald, and he gave him a lot of looks. He drove Nix into mental overdrive, and Nix handled it pretty well on what he was seeing. But if you look at that film, when I watched it a second time, he's processing. It's like the wires are the Intel Pentium processor is moving, but his default was get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball. So he was getting rid of the ball quickly, and they're playing a coverage where they tackled unbelievably well because Broncos receivers had no yards after contact for the most part. No receiver had more than, I think, 8 yards in yards after contact. So McDonald challenged Nix mentally. Tomlin won't trick it up as much, I don't believe, but he's just got better players. And then you go to Tampa Bay with Todd Bowles. Bowles is still a little unproven as a head coach. Obviously, was fired with the Jets. He was a great coordinator when Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. And he is known, and he got him to the playoffs last year. He is known for exotic blitzes. Exotic blitzes in a way to get after passers, a way to make their life miserable. That's Todd Bowles. And then Robert Saleh with the Jets. Saleh, by the time the Broncos get there at the end of the month, he could be coaching for his job. I mean, if they lose like to the Titans this week, Saleh's on the ropes. His defense looked like crap against the Niners. And it's the Niners, but it had no Christian McCaffrey. And Ayuk was on a pitch count and didn't play well after missing essentially all of camp. His defense didn't look the part. So you know he's going to be selling out to win that game defensively. Even if they are, say, 1-2, even 2-1, they have to win games like that against the Broncos if they're going to go to the playoffs, which they haven't been in, 13 years. So the challenge for Knicks is starting out of the gate, starting against these 4 coaches who were former defensive coordinators and 3 or 4 on the road. So what I'm telling you, Broncos country, is deep breath, put your tray in the upright position, buckle your seatbelt, turbulence ahead. There's going to be turbulence, and it's okay. This is part of it. It's part of it with Knicks. The key is he's able to survive it and then come out of that turbulence and steady the plane, and the unfastened seatbelt comes back on. You're able to get up and move about the cabin. But this first month could be rocky, and Sean Payton could be forced by the end of this month, as I write in my column today, to defend the decision to start him. Because if they lose this game, folks, against Pittsburgh, they will be underdogs at Tampa. They will be underdogs at the Jets. They are then facing an 0-4 start. I hope that's not the case. But Knicks will not be able to avoid getting caught up in that wash. If they're facing 0-4 and then ultimately go 0-4, he's going to get a fair amount of blame, if not more so, because he's the quarterback. So patience. And where they're failing Knicks, the Broncos, is not admitting they're rebuilding. This is why I think teams should be transparent with their fans, especially Broncos country, a very intelligent fan base, loyal fan base, been around for 5 decades. By not saying you're rebuilding and that we're not conceding anything, I get it, the mentality, and part of it's to sell the locker room. But if they start 0-4 and the fans set expectations, and many did based on my social media and reactions to my pick at 6-11, many are thinking 9, 10, 11 wins. They start 0-4, all of that criticism goes back to Knicks. And that's not fair to his development given where they are right now. They're in transition. And that's okay. Again, if they go 5-12 and the needle's pointing up with Knicks at the end of the year, and you can see like he is the guy, that's where you want to be. That's where you want to be. So understand the challenge. And with the Steelers, the challenge is real. Their defense with Mike Tomlin. It is real. And Knicks needs help on Sunday. They need to establish the run game. And if they don't establish it, they at least have to be stubborn with it to set up play action. Which brings me to my next topic that we're going to hit after the break. Well, it's never a bad time to enhance your home. Maybe you just want it to be more comfortable. Glassdoor is at a great and a nice touch. That's where Jamie Haig comes in. He and his wife, Lisa, run RBJ Glass. It's a family business. They pride themselves on customer service, honesty, and integrity. They put a sliding glass door in our house. We love it. Jamie does great work. RBJ stands for quality. They install European shower enclosures, standard shower glass. They do mirrors, window and glass replacement, insulated doggy doors with the winter coming up, office cubicles, and small commercial storefronts. They have competitive prices and offer discounts to veterans, senior citizens, and have even accommodated single parents. So what are you waiting for? Give my friend Jamie a call. It's Jamie of RBJ Glass, 720-883-3144. That's 720-883-3144. Or email Jamie at rbjglass2017@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Broncos podcast with Troy Rink. I am your host, Troy Rink, columnist for the Denver Post. Check out my columns at denverpost.com/sports. You can see the links I tweet out on my social media on Twitter. on Facebook, and I'm also on every Friday night on Fox 31 KDVR with Mick and Bruce and that crew previewing the Broncos game every week. So you can see me on Fridays, and that link will also be tweeted out on social media. I cannot tell you, Broncos country, how much I appreciate the support, and especially of the pod. It's gaining traction. You guys are understanding where it's at. If people don't know, tell them to subscribe. Hit it again. There's 2 pods a week, so you guys make this possible. You're the reason I do it, because there's an audience, a passionate audience, and I love the interaction with those I see who see the pod. You guys make it so worth it. But I know it's hard, Broncos country. Let's not kid ourselves. Have not been to the playoffs since Peyton Manning retired. He's now media star. People don't even think of him as a football player anymore. That's how long he's been out of the game. They have not had a winning season since 2016. Those goals for me are not going to happen this year, but that's okay. I've just told you that. But they need to be better and more functional offensively. I thought Sean Payton failed Bo Nix in Seattle, throwing 42 times because they lack balance. You cannot do that in that environment. Rookie quarterbacks are now 4-15 at Lumen Field since it opened. But the reason you stick with the run and get stubborn with the run is it opens up some play action shots in the 9 route. Mims the word. You see the headline. What in the F is going on with Marvin Mims? You're telling me he only got 1 target against the Seahawks? That was the first play after the 2-minute warning. A pedestrian, incomplete, short pass over the middle. Nothing says afterthought like my first pass to a receiver is with 1:55 left in the game. Now, I understand. Mims did not have a great camp. He and Coach Johnny Morton did not seem like they were on the same page at times. Mims even expressed frustration in camp. We just saw it with him one point through his helmet. And here's my point. I get it. As a coach, guys have to earn it. We're not just throwing out free plays and free targets around here. But at some point, talent has to win out. You cannot win with a bunch of try-hard guys. And we've said this. Like, if Sutton for me is a 2, a really good 2, he's a 2. Josh Reynolds has been a 3, now he's your 2. Devon Bailey, I love his potential. He's a rookie. Lil Jordan Humphrey. I mean, how many times are we going to just base the fact he's on the team because he knows Peyton's playbook? I get it. But you're telling me Mims can't get more targets than Lil Jordan Humphrey? Part of it is that Peyton has a type. I mean, those 4 guys average 6'3", 6'4", right at 215. Mims is under 6 feet, right at 180 pounds. But he has something they don't. He can run faster than any of them. He can get behind the defense. And I'm not saying he's going to get 8 targets. But he set a career low in snaps, percentage plays, and tied his career low with 12 snaps. And I see the criticism online. They don't really run the deep route in Peyton's offense. Well, they better freaking start running it some, or Bo Nix is going to have 10 guys at the line within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. That threat has to be there. Whether it's Mims or ultimately Troy Franklin, and a few months from now, that threat has to be there to loosen the defense. And the idea Mims can't get a 9 route during a game, I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. I don't. We fought with Peyton over this last year when Mims last year started off with like 231 yards in the first 4 games, a long touchdown. Over his last 12 games, counting this opener, from the early last season to now, his last 12 games, Mims averages 1 catch for about 10, 12 yards a game. What? So you're telling me you moved up into the 2nd round to take a returner? That's your first move in the draft if you're Sean Payton, to move a returner? A really good returner. Pro Bowl, all-pro returner. We don't move into the 2nd round to take returners. Those are guys they're undrafted free agents. 6th, 7th, 8th, 6th, 7th rounders. 8th round, if you will, meaning undrafted free agent. So to me, Mims has got to get 2 to 3 targets, around 3 targets. And one of those needs to be a deep shot because you've shown stubbornness in the run game. I talked to Mims about it briefly this week, and he said, listen, it's frustrating. I got to be patient. He understands, like we all do, it's a week-to-week league. It's a matchup league. There's times it doesn't totally fit. I think we all understand that. And the 9 route does take time to develop. Their pass protection wasn't great, but your pass protection improves if you stay stubborn with the run. so guys aren't pinning their ears back. And it's just, you see the same thing happen with CU. Part of the reason that I preach that CU has to run more is to protect Shedeur Sanders and create physical, mentality for your offensive line. I think Coach Sanders was trying to argue this week that you can have a physical identity pass blocking 50, 55 times. That's news to me. I've covered professional football for right at 30 years. I've never had one lineman tell me that we feel physical when we're stepping backward 50 times a game. Never once. Never. From Elway to Manning to Plum. I mean, go down through the Broncos quarterbacks. You got to give them a little meat on the bone. Let them chew on it. Let them exert their will at times and win at the line of scrimmage. Because once you do that and you're able to run just enough, guess what happens? You get a safety peeking in, you get a corner peeking in, and that's all Mims needs, and you can fire and let it eat. Let it eat if you're Bo Nix. One pass to Mims last week could have changed that game. And they're going to say, hey, it wasn't there. Okay, it's got to be there some, because you don't have a lot of weapons that would preclude you from using him at all. And Coach Payton indicated this week that his snap count and usage would likely go up. We got to see it, because we were told the same thing last year, and he couldn't get on the field. And it was troublesome last year because I write about this in my column this week. You can see it at the Denver Post. Jerry Jeudy and Russell Wilson had a connection about as good as Afghanistan Wi-Fi. They were never on the same page, as in ever. So why not throw a few snaps for Mims' way? No. Can't do that. He's our most explosive player. Let's keep him humble over here on the side. The only way he would get less action is if he's inactive. And he won't be, because he's their return man. But what I'm saying is they're not good enough from a receiving core standpoint for him not to get some snaps and some targets. Give him 3 targets. Try to make one a deep ball. That's how you beat a team like Pittsburgh. Because Pittsburgh wants to win this game ugly. They want to win 15-12. They won at Atlanta without scoring a touchdown. 6 field goals, 18 points. Field goals, win field position, turn the ball over. That's what they're going to try to do. So my point is, one Mims 60-yarder, you get a touchdown. Now you're staring at being able to score, if you're the Broncos, right at 20 points. You can beat them at that number. You can't beat them at 12. You can't beat them probably at 15. You can beat them at 20, the Steelers. Because Justin Fields will make a mistake or two. He will. I like Fields coming out of college. If you could want to blame it on just going to the Bears and not learning the position, he still doesn't see the field well. Now, his athleticism is amazing, his ability to run. But this Pittsburgh offensive line is injured, and they're not great. The Broncos need to try to win this game by getting after Fields, whether it's in the pass or run game. Remember last year at Chicago, the Broncos were staring at a loss that would have opened them up at 0-4 at that point. They just come off that horrific game at Miami and got down like 28-0. Fields looked like he was going to Canton at halftime. He was like 20 of 22. One completion was a throwaway. He did to them what Tua did the week before. And then in the second half, they finally figured out the defense. The communication of the secondary improved, and they started getting after Fields. And a strip sack essentially won that game involving Jonathan Cooper. And that is the same type of game. The second half of the Bears game is the same type of game you need to play against the Steelers. And one of the big plays in that Bears game, ironically enough, that set up one of the scores was a Mims long pass, 47-yarder to set up a score. That's what I'm saying. I think he had 3 targets, but one catch from Mims can change the field. 50 yards, 45 yards. So just something to keep an eye on. This is a very winnable game for the Broncos. But they're going to have to win it with defense. They're going to have to be boring offensively, stick with the run, mix in some RPOs with Bo Nix, but win it almost like the Steelers won it last week at Atlanta. Play smart offense, protect the ball, play the field position game, look for one big hit in there in the pass game. Hopefully it's there. It shows up because you've shown patience with the run. And then you win it because Fields loses it. Fields makes a mistake on a strip sack, or when he's running, you go up and punch the ball out like Fred Warner. Go in with the idea of every time Fields runs, we're trying to get the ball. That's how you beat them, and it's a winnable game. And now we will finish with odds and ends. And I want to hit real quickly the CU-CSU game. I think I told you last week my prediction was CU would lose at Nebraska. Have to be more competitive. That was a disappointing game. We're not going to rehash that here, but I hope there's lessons learned for CU in terms of even with Dallin Hayden out, you've got to find ways to create some balance offensively. Otherwise, Shedeur Sanders, it's just you can't throw 50 times and keep him healthy. And you might win this game, but long term for Sanders, Shedeur, you got to create some balance for him. I mean, this guy's hoping to go in the top 5 in the draft. He's got to be able to be upright at the end of the season to do that. You don't want him injured, and so they've got to show balance. In terms of CSU, this is the kind of game that turns their season around. They win this game, they are kind of feeling like for sure they're going to a bowl game, which I think Jay Norvell has to keep his job. They may disagree with that, but he's never won a game against a rival between CU, Wyoming, and Air Force. At some point, Norvell's got to win a rivalry game, and he has CU and Wyoming at home this year. But this is going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be closer than people expect. Last year was one of the best college football games that we saw. I mean, it went deep into the night, and CU won in overtime. And frankly, CSU was winning that game pretty handily until about the last three and a half minutes. They allowed CU to march down the field and score. And then for reasons that to this day make no sense, CSU didn't go for the win in overtime, which I would have, because at that point, Shedeur Sanders was on fire offensively. But I think it's going to be a really close game. I expect the Buffs to win a really close game. What that number looks like, my guess is it's going to be somewhere around 30-27, somewhere in there. But listen, they better protect the ball and have a little more balance because that stadium is going to be on fire. It is a season-type making game for CSU, but I think CU understands too. If they don't win that game, their chances at a bowl get really, really slim fast, like Ozempic fast in terms of getting slim if they lose that game. Because now you're going to have to win on the road against some teams that are not going to be easy marks. So it's a huge game for the Buffs in terms of bowl eligibility. I never believed the delusions of adequacy of 8, 9, 10 wins. I predicted it for the season. They'd be right around 6, that both teams would. And the team that wins this game, I think, ends up having the most wins this season. So a fun game up there in Fort Collins on, I think it's 5:30 on CBS on Saturday night. So I know a lot of you will be tuned into that. My final thing to keep an eye on is my prediction for the Broncos. And I know I get hammered for saying, you don't think the Broncos are ever going to win. You're negative about the Broncos. Listen, I perceive being negative as being realistic. I'm not going to gas you how great they are if I don't see it. I covered the back-to-back Super Bowl champion Broncos team. I know what great Broncos teams looks like. I covered Peyton Manning's Super Bowl 50 team. We wrote a book about it at the Denver Post. I know what it looks like. They're in transition. That's okay. There's winnable games on the schedule. This is one of them. And I told you earlier in the podcast, if you're just joining in, folks, this September is an absolute bitch for Bo Nix because of facing 4 former defensive coordinators in his first 4 games. But this one, because it's at home, the only one of the 4 is a winnable game. And I think you're going to see that Vance Joseph defense, the one we saw in the first half, they are going to create takeaways enough for a victory. Very similar to how they posted that 5-game win streak last year. Take the ball away, run the football enough, take care of the football. Win the takeaway battle, win the game. I have the Broncos winning an absolutely ugly, hide your eyes, 17-16 game. That's what I see for the Broncos. Well, folks, I could not do this pod without the great friends at Mile High Sports. Nate, my man Danny behind the glass producing this YouTube broadcast, and you can hear it on audio as well on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. I can't thank you all, Broncos country, enough for that support. I could not do the pod without the support. My A1 from day one, that's Darby Hoggett and Hoggett Injury Law, and of course, Jamie Haig of RBJ Glass. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.